Claudia Ainsley was a normal young woman who had a very happy life. She was married to a very nice young man named Joseph Ainsley, with whom she had 3 children, Robert, Wendy, and Malcolm. She loved them all to pieces. It was a fine day, and she was getting ready to go grocery shopping. After checking that she had her keys, she set out for the grocery store. While there, she bought everything on her shopping list, or so she thought. As she pulled into her driveway, she found her neighbor Felicity Drummond outside her front door. She got out of the car in a panic. Felicity said, "Claudia, I was just passing by and found your front door wide open. I went in to see if any burglars had entered and taken anything." Claudia responded, "Oh shit, I must have forgotten to shut and lock it on my way out." Felicity reassured her, "Don't worry, nothing was stolen. You were very lucky not to have been burgled." Claudia sighed in relief. "Thank fuck for that." Felicity added, "You were very careless not to lock up securely before you went out." Claudia thanked her. "Thanks for checking in on us. It's very much appreciated." Felicity replied, "There's no need for language like that, but you're welcome." Claudia began unloading her car and taking her shopping bags inside her house before locking her car securely. She came in, shut the front door securely, and went to unpack and put her groceries away when she realized she'd forgotten to buy items Joseph, Robert, Wendy, and Malcolm had asked for specifically. Rather than panic, she went on the shop's website and ordered those 4 items which came within the hour of being ordered. Claudia muttered to herself, "Why didn't I just order the groceries online? It would be so much easier, and I wouldn't forget anything."
Gareth Barnes was a troublemaking teenager who liked to cause trouble where he went. He was at school right now trying to earn himself some sort of punishment for disrupting his classes, but he wasn't getting what he wanted. As the break bell rang and everyone went outside, he showed past some younger students without apologizing and ran across the playground. During the break, he knocked into several students, picked on some of them, and falsely accused others of doing the same to him. As they made their way back to class, he was stopped by the deputy head teacher, who told him off and gave him a month of after-school detention. He was excited after achieving what he'd been trying to achieve all morning at this point, as he loved detention, seeing it as a reward rather than a punishment. As he arrived for his detention after school that afternoon, he sat behind the desk and wrote lines for 2 hours while imagining himself on an adventure in a world called Detention Land, where he was the hero of everyone in the land who was chosen to conquer the Dark Lord Release Lot, a disgraced knight who was once honoured amongst the people of the world, but was stripped of his title, armour and honour as a traitor to the land after turning himself around and being released from detention, abandoning his people and his position. It was Gareth's responsibility to protect the land against his menacing ways, along with an army of other detainees assigned to fight in his army. He also had several special powers to help him fight against the evil of Release Lot, whose name they were too scared to speak due to him being a very dangerous dark knight. As the new chosen warrior, he needed training in combat first, so was assigned to Detention Land School of Combat with the teacher Mr. Richmond, who was going to train him in the most effective form of physical combat the land had to offer. Karatin doxing, which was a mix of karate, kendo and boxing. His training was only just beginning.
There was a girl named Sophie who lived with her single mother Davina and older sister Victoria. They loved her to bits, but there was one side of her personality they didn't like, and that was her selfish attitude towards everyone she came across. It didn't matter to her who was selfish towards or what she was selfish about. One day, as they sat down for breakfast, Davina warned she'd be grounded for 2 years if she was selfish towards anyone while they were out, and made her promise not to be selfish towards anyone for any reason. Davina, Sophie, if you are selfish towards anyone today, you will be grounded for 2 years. Promise me you won't be selfish. Victoria was 18 years old and a young woman, and could see a meltdown coming on reminded her what happened the last time she did this while they were out. Victoria, remember what happened last time, Sophie. Don't let it happen again. Sophie gave her a look that said she didn't want to listen but nodded all the same. An hour later, they were at the shopping centre looking around the shops. Sophie was given 20 minutes to look in the second-hand media shop to see if she could find the DVD she wanted. By her luck, she found the last copy and picked it up. Just as she was about to go and pay for it, another child came in looking for it. Upon seeing that she had it, he asked her if he could have it. She thought about it for a moment. "Sophie, sorry, I got it first. Please move so I can go and buy it," she said nicely and went to buy it. "Boy, selfish girl, boy's dad." Now, son, she's not being selfish. She was here first, and we can't expect her to let you have it." She met up with Davina and Victoria within the time frame she was given. She told them she got the last copy of the DVD she wanted, but a boy came in looking for the same one and asked her if he could have it. "Davina, what did you say when he asked you?" "Sophie, I told him nicely I was there first and asked him nicely to move so I could go and get it." "Davina, that was very selfish of you, Sophie. You should have let the boy have it." Sophie was taken aback by her mother's reaction. Victoria stepped in. "Victoria, hang on a second, Mum. I failed to see how Sophie was being selfish if she was there first. Why should she have let the boy have it?" Davina knew she'd overreacted and apologized to Sophie, who forgave her, and thanked Victoria for sticking up for her as they went on their way. Outside in the town square, as they headed towards the next shop, they were stopped by a homeless man who asked if they had any change. Davina, "No, sorry." Victoria, "No, sorry." So he tried his luck with Sophie. Sophie, thinking, "Look, I don't have any change, all right. Get out of my face." She thought about saying to him, but instead said, "Sophie, I don't have any change either, mate. Sorry," and followed Davina and Victoria. "Homeless man, selfish little missy." Another man stepped in when he heard that. "Man, now, sir. That girl isn't being selfish. If she can't spare any change, she can't. After all, you can't expect everyone to give you their change. They have to want to give it." As Sophie made her way across the town square with her mother and sister, they stopped again to see the man. Sophie smiled at him as she handed him £5 coins. "Sophie, go to the bakery, get yourself a cup of tea and some cakes or something." Davina, "Well done, Sophie." They saw the boy and his dad passing by and they stopped to give him some change as well. The boy approached her. "Boy, can I please have that DVD?" She looked at him, wanting to tell him rudely to get lost, as she'd got there first, but instead said, "Sophie, I'm sorry, but I can't just give it to you, as I was there first. However, I think that charity shop behind you has some copies in. Why don't you go and get it there?" Despite wanting to be selfish all day, it had taken her a great deal of energy and thought to be nice instead. But she was determined not to snap. How long was this going to last?
Rory Fellows was a young man of 21 years old, whose father had called him into his office to talk to him. Once Rory was sitting comfortably in an armchair in his dad's office, he told him about how the men in their family had the ability to travel through time. Specifically, they could travel back in time, not to the future. They could only travel back in time to different points in their own lifetime. They couldn't go back and kill that evil bastard who caused the war, as he put it. Rory had trouble believing him, thinking he was trying to trick him, despite his insistence that it was true. "Rory, supposing that this was true, which it isn't, obviously, how does it work?" "First of all, son, it is true, and it's very simple. You just go into a dark enclosed space like a wardrobe, close your eyes and clench your fists while visualizing which point you wish to revisit. When you open your eyes and unclench your fists and exit the dark enclosed space, you will be back at your chosen point in time." Thinking his dad was still having him, he told him he'd be in lots of trouble when he returned from being in a cupboard, with his eyes closed and fists clenched, and went to hide in his wardrobe, closed his eyes, clenched his fists, and thought hard about which point in his life he wanted to revisit. He felt a strange sensation and heard strange noises in his ears. Once it had all stopped, he opened his eyes, unclenched his fists, and opened the wardrobe door to hear party music and cheerful laughter downstairs, and closed the door. "Rory, oh my God," he thought to himself as he left the wardrobe and went to see what was being celebrated. It was New Year's Eve the previous year, and he felt like he shouldn't be there, but then remembered that he was now himself at that party. When he returned to his own time, he returned to his dad's office and was warned to be careful what he used his new ability for. He decided to use it to help people, which he was commended for. The next week, he left home for London, where he was going to start a career as a lawyer, and live with one of his dad's friends who happened to be a playwright. While there, he made a few mistakes which he used his time-traveling ability to go back and fix them all. One day he was out shopping at a department store when he found himself down in the basement instead of the ground floor. This was a mistake. He looked around to check he was alone, closed his eyes, clenched his fists, and thought of himself walking through the alley behind the store just before he entered. He opened his eyes to find himself in the alleyway just before he entered the department store and carried on walking until he reached the store entrance and entered to start his shopping all over again. This time he finished his shopping and managed not to make the mistake of going to the basement again. He left the store and went on his way. He was getting used to his time travel ability and needed to be very careful how he used it. That evening he was out for a walk when he got caught in a thunderstorm, and nobody else was out because it was too dark and wet. He ran under cover in an underpass where it was dark, so he tried to use his time travel ability to go back before he went out and decide not to go out. As he closed his eyes, clenched his fists, and visualized his chosen destination, the alley was struck by lightning, causing his ability to go haywire. When he opened his eyes and unclenched his fists, he listened out for voices. Upon hearing the voices of some very young people, he emerged from the alley to find himself out on a sunny day. He walked around very carefully until he saw the newspaper and learned he'd been catapulted back to a school trip he went on when he was 6. This meant he needed to be extra careful, as there were 2 versions of him in the same place at the same time. Oh boy.
Have you ever wondered if an opposite world existed on the other side of a mirror's glass? Lee Joseph did as he sat watching the Star Journeys episode about the characters coming face to face with their mirror universe selves. When he finished watching it, he studied his face in the mirror. As he did this, his reflection didn't show the normal him staring back at him, but his mirror image counterpart beckoning to him as he approached the glass. A portal opened as his mirror clone started walking away, and Lee stepped through the portal, falling into a vortex. Lee falls through a swirling vortex, arriving on the other side in a world where things were the opposite of things in his world. For instance, he was a nice young man who dressed immaculately, while his opposite self was a nasty old man who was scruffy and dressed in ragged old clothes. He noticed how a shoplifter was bowed from a shop in a friendly manner while a customer was arrested for purchasing a plasma screen television. A bit further on, he noticed a dog walking its human, which was also weird because in his own world, people took their dogs for walks. As he entered the city center, he noticed how a crime scene featured a chalk drawing of someone being rescued while someone was being murdered right beside it. Learning that it was illegal to rescue a murder victim in this world while letting them get killed was legal. He was now in jail for the criminal act of reporting a crime and faced up to a year in prison for it. He noticed a mirror in his cell and escaped through back to his own world. That was that weirdness over, and he was glad.
On the 21st of October 1980, at Gwen Bryant's maternity hospital, Martin and Debbie Redman had just welcomed their baby daughter Trixie into the world. They loved her to pieces and couldn't wait to take her home. She was a perfectly healthy, normal-sized baby, but little did anyone know, her life was about to be most extraordinary. By the age of 1, she was already 3.5 feet tall, which they thought was strange because she shouldn't have been the size of a 4-year-old, but here she was, a year old, and the size of a child 4 times her age. When she started school at the age of 5, she was much taller than her classmates, now being the size of a fully grown adult at 5 feet and 8 inches. Everyone was completely baffled by her fast growth. Why was she growing at such a rapid rate? When she left school at the age of 16, she stood at a staggering 7 feet and 2 inches tall, which shocked her and everyone who knew and loved her. She started sixth form college that autumn, but at a then full 8 feet tall, she almost couldn't fit in the building, but they had special access for her due to her height. 2 years later, she was 18 years old and had left college with a place at university. By this point, she stood at a whopping 9.5 feet tall. This amazed all who saw her out in public. When she graduated from university at 21 years old, she stood at her final monolith height of 11 feet and 5 feet. How on earth had she grown to such a ginormous height? Due to her monstrous height, she was given special benefits and was grateful for it. She learned she'd be unable to give natural birth but could still adopt if she wanted to in the future. In 2019, while visiting an orphanage hoping to adopt a child, she was pleased to meet every youngster who lived there. She was most intrigued by a trio of youngsters who looked very different from the rest. They were a girl with red hair and freckles who spoke French, and 2 boys, one with blue hair with brown eyes and wore round-rimmed glasses, and the other with green hair. He wore a green cardigan and green shorts. She just adored them and offered to adopt them on the spot, naming them Tilly, Tom and Tiny, making their adoption official. When they got home, her 3 new children were amazed at the size of their new home. The sheer surprise of it suddenly made Tilly start speaking English, despite never having learned any of it. All 3 of them ran into their new loving mother's enormous arms for a family hug.
Zach was a teenager who wanted to do his best, except this wasn't always possible. Let me explain. One Tuesday, he woke up and got ready for school as he usually did. He sat down to eat his breakfast, which consisted of toast and cereal with a cup of tea. That morning, however, there was no tea or toast or cereal because they'd run out of tea bags, bread and cereal. So he had to settle for bacon, eggs and juice, which he was unhappy with, but he ate it anyway. At school, he wasn't up to listening to anything teachers had to say and ended up in detention because of it. He was having a bad day and it was getting to him. As he was making his way home, a car sped through a puddle, splashing him, which he was not happy about. That evening was worse, as he was given leftovers for dinner, which was less than desirable, and to top it off, he was grounded for being such a mope all day. Could things be any worse? Jane Green was a naughty girl in every way. At any opportunity, she'd speak rudely to anyone who crossed her path, refuse to listen to anybody, even her parents, steal from shops, lie through her teeth about everything, disobey her parents about everything, including tidying her room, and sneak out while grounded. Take last Saturday, for example. That morning, she woke up in her usual naughty mood and got up and dressed without even brushing her hair and sat down for breakfast. As her dad served her, she just snatched it and scoffed without thanking him. "I beg your pardon, young lady, what do you say?" Jane gave her usual naughty grin. "Get stuffed." Her mum grabbed her by the collar and dragged her into the hallway. "You're being naughty again, aren't you?" Jane replied with a defiant no. "Don't lie to me, young lady, that's very naughty of you." Jane, still defiant, shot back, "Shut up, you're grounded, do you understand me? You are grounded for 2 weeks. How dare you even think about being so naughty? Go to your room this minute." Instead of doing what she was told, Jane decided to go out and get some fresh air, disobeying a direct order from her mother. She entered a shop without any money, pocketed some sweets and left the shop. As she walked down the street, she bumped into a police officer who stopped her to inspect her bag, only to catch her with the stolen sweets. "Police officer, turn around and put your hands behind your back." She took out her handcuffs, put them on Jane, and put her in the back of her squad car. "Police officer, you're going to jail." She escorted her to the police station where she was booked, changed into a custodial jumpsuit and locked in a jail cell. Jane had been arrested and jailed for shoplifting and now had a long time to think about what she'd done. She appeared in court 2 days later, where she was convicted of shoplifting and sentenced to 45 days in jail. So she was taken back to the police station and locked up in her cell, which was now her home for the next 45 days. After that time was up, she was released and sent on her way with the warning she'd be arrested again if she did anything else wrong. 2 weeks later, she was at home being naughty as usual, having not listened to her police warning. The police were called in because she was being disobedient and wouldn't listen to her parents, and she was arrested. She was now in jail for disobeying her parents, which she was shocked to learn was a criminal offense.